And welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host, and this evening's topic is we're gonna have a discussion with a local author about a book that he has written. And with me to discuss this evening's topic of the book is local author Bob Steele. Bob, welcome.
Glad to be here, Peter.
Glad to have you here. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So I was wondering, can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself? And I understand many of our viewers and our listeners are probably wondering that, okay, he's got Bob Steele on with him tonight. And are you in relation to the other Bob Steele who was in radio for many years and many decades in the state of Connecticut?
Yeah, he was for 61 years, and he was my dad.
Wow. And obviously he was loved by everybody in the state as far as.
Well, he had a great radio career, of course, on WTIC.
Yes.
Really, he was on, as I say, for 61 years. He set an all-time record, national record for major broadcasting longevity.
Really?
And he's in the Radio Hall of Fame, of course, in Chicago. So he had a great career, and he's been gone now for, well, since 2002, so he's been gone 11 years, just this month.
Wow. Well, I understand that you wrote a book about casino gambling, and I was wondering, maybe can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Well, the book is this is the book. The book is The Curse.
Yeah.
Big time gambling seduction of a small New England town, and the book is a novel set against the explosion of casino gambling in Connecticut during the 1990s, and it begins with the Pequot War back in the 1600s, when the Connecticut colonists living up and down the Connecticut River from Windsor down to Saybrook got together with their allies, the Mohegans, and almost annihilated and destroyed the Pequots, who, of course, at the time were the largest and most warlike of the tribes in Connecticut. And the story then jumps 350 years as these two tribes, the Mashantucket Pequots and the Mohegans, reemerge to build the world's two biggest casinos in southeastern Connecticut.
Yep.
And in the story, a fictional Connecticut family becomes embroiled in a battle to stop a third casino that threatens the family's town and ancestral home. So in the end, the book is really a Faustian tale about a small, quintessential New England town that must choose between preserving its character and its values on the one hand, or accepting an enormously lucrative and seductive offer that would change the town forever.
Now, where did you get the idea for the book?
Well, as you know, I represented Eastern Connecticut in Congress and during the 1970s, and I left Congress to run for governor unsuccessfully.
Okay.
And after that, I left politics back in 1975. I left politics, and my family, my wife and our 4 children, moved from Vernon, where we had lived for the last decade, and we moved to Ledyard.
Okay.
And we lived for the next 21 years, literally on the edge of the Mashantucket Pequot Reservation in Ledyard. And those two experiences, knowing, so to speak, the political background of Eastern Connecticut, as I did, and then living in the midst of this casino gambling explosion in southeastern Connecticut, really gave me the equivalent of a front row seat for watching the political maneuverings that led to the casinos and then seeing firsthand their impact.
Now, as far as you said you were local legislator. What area did you represent?
I was a member of Congress,
Okay, so you represented
and
the
I
whole-
represented 2nd District, Connecticut,
Okay.
which is just about all of eastern Connecticut, almost everything east of the
So,
Connecticut River.
so it's now Congressman Courtney's district.
It's now Congressman Courtney's district.
Okay, I
That's
got
right.
you. All
yeah.
right. Okay. Now, how come you wrote the book as, you said it's a novel, right?
The book is a novel set against the factual background
Right.
of what happened in Connecticut.
You could have, is there another way you could have written the book? Could you have written the book as like a memoir or another?
Well, I could have written a book as a nonfiction book,
Right.
but there have already been 3 very good nonfiction books about the rise of foxwoods.
All right.
Now, they're all 10, 11, 12 years old, but nonetheless, they're good books, and I saw no reason that the market needed another
Exactly.
nonfiction book. But more importantly, I wanted to put a human face on what happened in southeastern Connecticut.
Okay.
And I want to try to hit a more visceral chord than I think you can do with a nonfiction book. You know, statistics are important, and certainly are statistics, but statistics begin to roll off people's backs like water off a duck's back, I think.
Exactly.
You know, if you talk about what happens, the fact that we have 3 million pathological gamblers in the United States today, 6 to 9 million problem gamblers who only have a little less level of addiction.
Right.
Another 15 million American adults who are at risk for gambling addiction as casino gambling continues to spread across the country, as it's about to do in Massachusetts,
Right.
New York,
Right.
et cetera. But rather than talk about 3 or 15 million people, I thought if I could talk about one family,
Sure.
and I could talk about their children, I could talk about the husband and wife, and I could talk about the town and the town's battle against the casino, that I could hit that visceral chord, and I could put
Right.
that human face on the story that it's much harder to do with a nonfiction book.
Exactly, exactly. Now, as far as with as far as I guess you want to call it the future of the casinos go, you and I were talking, and I guess casino revenues are pretty much down right now.
Casino revenues, combined casino slot revenues going to the state of Connecticut
Right.
from Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun have been down now for 21 straight months, and they've been plummeting. They're down now over 32% from their peak. Peak was $430 million going to the state of Connecticut, shared slot revenues. Of course, 25% of the slot revenues go to the state treasury in Hartford. So those revenues have been plummeting, and there are 2 reasons. One is the weak economy, and the second is the growing competition. Back in 1988,
Yeah.
Congress passed something called the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, and it was meant to help poor, federally recognized Indian tribes build casinos on their reservations in order to raise money to support their tribal governments.
Okay.
But I think it would be fair to say that Congress had no idea of the Pandora's box it was opening when it passed this law, because the law not only opened the door to Indian casinos, but it led to the legalization and the building of non-Indian casinos across the United States as well.
Right.
Back in 1988, when the law was passed, there were only 2 states that allowed casinos. Nevada, obviously, with Las Vegas.
Right.
And New Jersey with Atlantic City.
Yeah.
Today we have 39 states, and we have almost 1,000 casinos. The country is awash in casinos. And those almost 1,000 are almost evenly divided between Indian and non-Indian casinos today.
Right.
Here in the Northeast, what we're seeing is increasing saturation. So there's more and more competition.
Right.
There are more casinos, so there are more patrons. There are more casino gamblers.
Right.
But each casino is having a harder time making money because of the tremendous and growing competition. For example, in the 9 states of the Northeast, when Foxwoods opened, in those 9 states, there were only 9 casinos, including the 1 in Connecticut and 8 in Atlantic City.
Wow.
Today there are 56 casinos in those 9 states.
Oh my God.
Massachusetts wants to build 3 more mega casinos.
Right.
New York just voted last week to authorize the building of up to 7 new full-scale commercial casinos across New York State.
All right.
Within the next 3 years, that number of casinos will be up from 56 to 70. So the casinos, the whole dynamics of the casino industry are changing dramatically.
Of course they are.
Connecticut no longer has the monopoly that allowed it to bring in over half its customers from out of state. And as a result, Connecticut's casinos are in increasing trouble. There have been, the layoffs have begun. They're increasingly turning to part-time jobs in order to lower wages, in order to reduce or get rid of benefits. Foxwoods, I'm sure you know, is deeply in debt. They've already defaulted once on an enormous $2.3 billion loan.
Right.
And so the whole question of where our casino industry goes in Connecticut next is now a major issue.
Exactly. And do you think where do you think it's going to go? Are they going to close them? Or are they going to?
I don't think anybody thinks they're going to close them right away, at least. Foxwoods appears to be in the most serious straits of the 2 casinos in Connecticut, but nobody's talking about closing them at the present time.
Right.
What is happening is Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, the government of Connecticut, is looking at this rapidly declining revenue, and one would hope that its decision would be to recognize that the bloom is off the rose for casino gambling, and begin to look at ways to make up for this declining revenue by beginning to control our spending, and also by finding other sources of revenue. But unfortunately, that's not what the state of Connecticut is doing. Instead, it appears that the state of Connecticut is intent on doubling down and encouraging more gambling in Connecticut. It just approved Keno. I don't know if your viewers are familiar with Keno, but it is essentially electronic bingo.
Okay.
And they want to put it in initially some 600 restaurants across the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
In bars, taverns, convenience stores. And it's going to be a wonderful thing, because it means when you go into one of these restaurants, you're not only going to get the menu, but you're going to have some numbers as well. And you're going to be able to gamble as you eat. It almost sounds like a song or a melody.
Exactly.
Gamble as you eat. And I'm sure if you're winning, it'll probably help your digestion a great deal. But if you're not,
if you're losing,
yeah, it may not help you so much.
Exactly.
But the sad thing about it is that if you happen to have your kids with you or your grandchildren with you, they're going to want to play.
Of course they are.
So it's going to be a wonderful way to teach your kids how to gamble for money.
Exactly.
And right here, I mean, we're recording this right now in your studio in Westbrook, but right in the next town, I believe it's a town you live in, Peter, but we have the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling.
Yes.
And we have a wonderfully courageous woman who's the executive director of that. Her name is Mary Drexler.
Okay.
And she took one look at what the legislature had done in passing Keno, and her reaction is that it is astounding, that was her word, that the Connecticut legislature, with all the information it has available to us, and knowing all the problems that Keno will create, including increased addiction, increased social problems, etc. And she said, look, it's going to cause even more problems than it's ever going to solve. And that was a very courageous thing for her to say, because, of course, she's funded by the state and gambling interests. And yet she came right out and she put it right out there that this was a huge mistake by the state of Connecticut. Some of the leading legislators in Connecticut then the next day actually held a press conference in Hartford and proposed that we legalize video slots, which are the most addictive form of slot machines.
Right.
And that we begin to install them in our OTB parlors across the state.
Okay.
Beginning with the Bradley Teletheater up in Windsor Locks.
Yep.
Sports Haven in New Haven. You see it as you go through New Haven.
Yep.
And the old dog track in Bridgeport. So it would be the beginning of the state of Connecticut creating its own slot parlors across the state. But I'll tell you,
What's that?
all of those measures really pale compared to what it appears the state of Connecticut has in store for us next. And just earlier this year, Nevada and New Jersey both legalized internet gambling for their casinos. And Connecticut's governor is on record as saying that if other states begin to legalize internet gambling for their casinos, we've got to do the same thing here in Connecticut in order to protect our casinos. So in other words, having brought physical casinos into the state of Connecticut during the 1990s, we're now facing increasing pressure to political pressure to legalize internet gambling in the state. And as one expert said, and of course the casinos want this.
Of course they do.
Because it means opening to a much younger audience.
Right.
And the experts are particularly concerned about it because they regard online gambling as the most addictive form of casino-type gambling.
Okay.
Because of the 24-hour availability of the games, because of the fast pace of the games.
Right.
I mean, constant betting, second after second, minute after minute, and of course the instant gratification aspect of online gambling. As one expert said, legalizing online gambling will be the equivalent of opening a 24-hour casino in every house, every apartment, and every dorm room in the state of Connecticut. And
do you think the online gambling is going to come to fruition and actually come to law?
Well, both casinos have made it very, very clear that they are they're poised. They've done a great deal of work.
Okay.
They're poised to offer it just as soon as it is legalized. And as I say, Connecticut's governor has said that when other states begin to do it, we should do the same thing. So it looks like that is likely to be the next shoe to drop. My hope is that, you know, Keno was approved at 2 o'clock in the morning by the legislature as part of the budget. There were no hearings on it.
Nope.
There was no debate on it on the floor. They simply did it, and my concern is that they don't simply do online gambling the same way. I hope that it will become an item on a ballot or a referendum in Connecticut, and that the people of Connecticut have the final say.
So basically, when you said they did it in session, they sort of snuck it in. One might say they sort of snuck it in.
Pete, they didn't sort of snuck it in.
They did sneak it in.
They did sneak it in,
right?
And I hope we'd all be dumb enough not to even notice it. But of course, the press has noticed, and the press has been all over it in Connecticut. And I give the press in Connecticut, both the electronic and the newspaper press, very, very high marks for how incisive their reporting on it has been, and their criticism of it has been. And I hope it is not going to be too late to reverse it.
Now, as far as the book goes, what gave you how long did it take you to write the book?
A long time.
A long time.
Well, a long time because, look, I don't do that for a living.
No.
I did something else for a living.
Exactly.
And I happen to travel a great deal for my company. I travel internationally. I wrote the book on airplanes. I wrote it in China. I wrote it in Europe. Whenever I had, not a few minutes because it takes time to do this kind of thing, but whenever I had, you know, if I had a couple hours and I had downtime, I would go back to the book. But to me, the whole story, the remarkable story of the history behind these casinos, Connecticut's history, the idea of these tribes where most of the Indian blood had disappeared, most of the Indian culture had disappeared, and yet re-emerging under the law to get federal recognition and then to build these two enormous casinos, which have had a major impact, of course, on the state of Connecticut.
Right. Now, as far as, let's talk about Keno in the aspect, like you and I talked about it a few minutes ago Keno, the way it works, yes, it's addictive, but you don't want to. I guess when they put the Keno machines, like you said, in the bars and the restaurants, and you're out to dinner with your family, you don't want to sit there and have your son or your daughter be sitting there watching you gamble and hitting buttons.
Well, exactly.
Right.
I mean, the whole idea is it's a shame.
Right.
It's a shame that the state legislature hasn't taken a longer-term view of this. And I want to say, incidentally, it's
Sure.
not necessarily a partisan issue.
No.
We had a Republican governor who wanted to put in Keno. And the Democrats at that time attacked the idea, said it was a dumb idea.
Right.
And they were right.
Right.
Of course, now they want to do it now that they are in power. No matter what party is in, it is a wrong thing for this state. It takes us down the wrong road. We've already got an enormous amount of legalized gambling in Connecticut.
Right.
The two biggest casinos in the hemisphere. We don't need more.
No, definitely not. Now you mentioned you and I were talking, and the amount of money from revenue that goes back to the state of Connecticut. I guess where does it go? Does it go in the general fund? Does it go into?
Well, that's a good question. Originally, when the lottery came in to Connecticut,
Yep.
all the money was supposed to go to education.
Okay.
It now goes to the general fund.
Gotcha.
When the casinos came in, the deal that was made was that all the money would go to the towns and cities.
Okay.
It now all goes to the general fund. So it's up to the legislature and the legislators to decide where that money goes today. It doesn't automatically go anywhere.
No, it just so your local legislator's got to decide.
And that's why they sell it, of course.
Right,
Say,
exactly.
It's almost un-American. I
Because-
mean, you listen to the debates up in Springfield, or up in West Springfield, or in Palmer, or Milford, or
Mass, right?
Yeah, or in East Boston. The casinos make it seem like this is the greatest thing that ever happened. We're going to create jobs.
Right.
We're going to spur economic development. We're going to send money to the states and cities, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is that most good independent economists are unanimous in saying that the long-term impact of casino gambling is negative on a community.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, as far as our listeners and our viewers, what else do we want to share with them as far as gambling and the casino gambling and all whether it be Keno or video slots, or I guess what else did you want to share with the?
Well, when the casinos try to come into a community, they will usually outspend the opponents
Right.
by 100 to 1, 200 to 1,
Right.
300 to 1. In Massachusetts, in these battles now, they're on Boston television, they're on Springfield television. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, whereas the opponents, who are usually not well organized at first, or don't have much money to spend,
Right.
will spend a few $1,000s. So it's a David and Goliath fight. And it's important people understand that the casino industry today has become a $63 billion industry, one of the most powerful lobbying groups in the United States. So these are very, very unequal fights, and it's very, very important, I think, that people have a chance to learn the research and the facts behind the results of casinos in this country.
Now, you and I talked about a little while ago during the segment about the difference between your Mashantucket casinos and your regular
I mean, Indian casinos versus commercial casinos.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, if you just go in as a customer, there's really no difference.
Okay.
The only difference might be the decor. There might be a Native American decor,
Okay.
et cetera. But the games at Foxwoods or at Mohegan Sun, or the games at the casinos they want to put in Massachusetts, those games are the same games.
Okay.
So you can lose just as much at either kind of a casino.
Exactly, but there's really not that much of a difference.
Well, that's
besides the decor.
exactly right.
Exactly. Now, what would you Well, as far as the casinos go, and I know you and I talked about they're voting up in Massachusetts tomorrow, as far as if they want to build a casino.
There's a major vote in Milford, Massachusetts tomorrow.
Right.
The Mashantucket Pequot tribe in Foxwoods
Right.
has proposed, along with partners,
Yep.
a roughly $1 billion casino for Milford, Massachusetts. Of course, the casino here in Connecticut, Foxwoods, is having a great number of problems.
Of course.
As I said, they're deeply in debt. Their revenue has been plummeting, and they have even begun to apply for more grants from the Bureau of Indian Affairs in order to get more federal money for their tribe in order to make up for some of this declining revenue. But they certainly haven't been too poor to propose a $1 billion casino in Massachusetts. And according to Moody's Investor Services, for example, this is the key to their future success and prosperity. So it's an enormously important vote. I'm sure that by the time this program airs, the vote will be over.
Yes.
And
Probably.
We'll know the results. But there have been votes, or will be votes, when it's done, in some 11 communities across Massachusetts in order to pick sites for 3 new casinos and a major slots parlor.
Now, as far as I'm going to ask you your own professional, own opinion. You think it's going to pass?
I think it's going to be very, very close. The opponents have put together a very, very strong campaign. There's enormous grassroots opposition against the casino in Milford, just as there was in Palmer. But the casino partnership is outspending enormously the opponents. As I say, it's a David and Goliath fight. But the grassroots opposition is very, very strong, and I think it'll be a very close vote.
It'll be a very, 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 very close call, and and once the vote comes and they say yes, it's probably going to take a couple of years for everybody to break ground and open.
Even then, there's going to have to be a second vote about changing some zoning laws. So even then, even should it win, it wouldn't be over, but it would be one big step closer. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bob Steele, before we say goodnight, I just wanted to thank you for coming down. Hopefully you'll come back down again.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thank you. On behalf of Bob Steele, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.